to the show, Adam. I am so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa.
Absolutely. So, for you listeners out here, I have been talking to Adam for quite some time. We've been trying to get him on my calendar. Adam is a wealth coach, and today he's here to share his story of financial freedom and everything from debt to investing, how he did it, where he's going with it. So, first of all, Adam, can you please just kind of jump in and instead of me reading out a long, boring bio about you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, thank you for the brief introduction. I would say a brief bio about myself. Am a self proclaimed finance nerd. And so I love kind of all things financial. And I've basically swung pendulum all different directions from college until I'm now in my mid 40s. So I learned a lot of lessons along the way of both saving, being in debt, working on getting out of debt, different types of investments, and really how best to invest and create results. So I've learned mistakes and how to correct those mistakes. I'm also have my beautiful wife Emily. We've been married for almost 15 years, and two great little kiddos who are both in elementary school.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. You've got some littles. I'm jealous of those days. I'm getting ready to take my youngest to college. So
Yeah, it's funny. I probably most people with little kids will say this, but I can't even imagine what those days are going to be like. It feels like they say that adage, "The days are long, but the years are short," is very true.
yes, it's very true. It's nothing like anybody could ever describe. I'm like, okay, I have all this free time, but how am I gonna fill it? I don't even know. Obviously, putting myself into work, this podcast, I absolutely love doing the podcast, helping my clients buy more real estate, all the things. I'm just gonna be filling in my time and drowning my sorrows in, real estate.
Sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, yeah. So let's kind of dive into everything. If you don't mind, start at the beginning because I know that we've kind of talked a little bit about your journey. You were at a point, and I don't want to like mess up your story or anything, but where were you at when you were like, okay, I've got to figure this out. I don't want to, just be stuck working a 9 to 5 and having debt and not having financial freedom. And I mean, was there a moment like that where you were like, "Hey, I gotta make a change. I gotta get out of this." Like, kinda fill me in, like, where are you at with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say the summary of where we were is about 5 years ago. As I mentioned before, my wife and I, we've done a lot of different types of investments. We even, we both have 401ks. We've worked at different W-2 jobs. I've done real estate syndications. Invested in insurance. I have brokerage accounts with stocks and bonds. And I love all that stuff. I think all that stuff has its place in your investment portfolio. The problem that we were running into is none of those investments were creating any income for us now, right? So I used the example, it was like we had this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? And it's like eventually we'll get to touch the pot of gold, but not now. And so, like I mentioned, we still have little kids at home. And so we were at this place where life was continuing to get more expensive. We live in Southern California, but regardless of where you live, life's getting more expensive no matter what. And so we wanted my wife's a nurse, and we wanted her to be able to actually work less than she's working now, not more, so be able to cover our expenses. And so I started this pretty passionate search for looking for ways to build passive income and do it in a way where it wasn't a second job for me. So that's kind of where I was when I started the search.
Okay. So you knew, you're like, "Hey, I wanna enjoy that pot of gold now. I don't wanna wait." I don't know if you've seen that meme. I saw it years ago. I thought it was pretty funny. It's still floating around where there's a couple on a gondola, and they're in Italy, and the people in the photo are, like, 90, and they're, like, sleeping on the gondola.
Yeah.
And, and it was something like, "Are you waiting to do this when you're retired?" Or something like that, something to that effect. And it stuck out to me so much because I'm like I had the same thing. I'm like, "Why are we putting everything for later, for retirement, for this thing that we may or may not we don't know what life is gonna hold for us?" There's so many variables. How can we enjoy life now and get time back?
Yeah, 100%. Yep, that was exactly the same position that we were in. Like you said, just storing things up for what if or one day when you don't know what that day looks like.
Yeah. So what did you do? What did you do next? Where did that journey go?
So that's great. So I have a really wonderful mentor close to where we live that I meet with. I have breakfast every few weeks. I'm a big fan of mentors, people that are either older than me or have been in a place that I haven't been to yet. And so I was meeting with him, and I kept saying to him, "Hey, I'm looking for this solution." And so I can remember the day we were sitting at breakfast, and he told me, he said, "Hey, I ran into the CEO of this company. It's called Tardus." He said, "You should check it out." The CEO's name is Tanisha, and it's a passive income system. And he started explaining to me kind of the intricacies of how the passive income system worked. And again, I'm a finance nerd by trade. And so as soon as he explained the system to me, the first thought I had is, I can't believe like that idea never dawned on me. And then the second one is like, how quickly can I talk to somebody from that company? So we left breakfast and he said, "I'll do the introduction for you." And I was like, and I've texted him probably within 20 minutes and said, "Send me the information. I have to figure this out. I feel like this is exactly what I was looking for." So I got to the point where I scheduled what we call a strategy session. So I was basically met with a wealth coach, the position that I have now, and I sat down and basically broke down my wife and I situation. And I actually had my wife join me. I'm a big fan of, if you're in a situation where you're married, and I think it's great to have you and your spouse both on the same page. So Emily and I sat down together with the wealth coach. Her name was Sharon. She's amazing, and started talking about our situation, really kind of what our desires were from a passive income perspective.
Amazing. So, okay, so I'm hooked. I've got I got to keep on going with the story. So you sat down, you listened. I mean, were you expecting just kind of like, I mean, sounds like you were kind of already a little bit sold on it. Were you expecting kind of like a sales pitch, or is this real? I mean, I get that all the time. People are like, that sounds so easy what you're doing. It sounds too good to be true.
Well, and that's what you get, is the too good to be true. The good news is that, so before I had done the strategy session, I'd watched a couple of videos on how the system worked. And so I would argue I was probably one of Sharon's easier sells, if you will. But we went through the process. And as soon as I kind of understand it, and the neat thing about the strategy session was that she built me a model, before I even joined Tardus, and basically told me, this is exactly what your situation looks like, and here's how we think that we can help. And for us, we had some debt, we had some car loans and some other things that we needed to address, but also we had this desire to start to supplement our income. And so she was able to model all that for me before we joined. And then from that perspective, once I saw the plan, I was like, all right, how quickly can we get started? And we jumped on board.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that plan. So I've talking to you and I've talked to many people at Tardis, which by the way, absolutely fantastic, wonderful company. And I've got a link in the show notes for everybody who's listening right now, who's interested in learning more about Tardis. I'm going to be sharing that note or that link with you guys, and we'll mention it at the end. But I always like to mention at the beginning because sometimes people are listening to a podcast and they get like sidetracked, or they're middle of doing a chore and their kid comes in, and so I'll mention it a couple times. There will be a link in the show notes below. And the model is absolutely amazing. It's really cool. And I know it's patented, this thing that they created. So walk us through this. So it's basically it's called the snowball. I know that. And it's basically designed to help you get out of debt by creating passive income, and then it does lead to, like, financial freedom and all of these things, right? So I'm very, very, very basic level with this. So fill me in here. Tell me a little bit more about the model.
I love talking about it. So I always like to give the caveat up front that my role at Tardis now is I'm an independent wealth coach. So everything I'm going to discuss is for educational purposes and not necessarily investment advice. So the results can vary, and they're not necessarily guarantees. But with that said, we've had over 8,000 clients at Tardis, and we've seen wild success. And so this is really how the system works.
I was gonna say, you're your own success story, which is what I absolutely love. I mean, that's why I'm a real estate investment coach as well, is because I was successful in real estate. So I love that. So sorry to interrupt. Keep going, but you are your own success story, which is really
That's
awesome.
very kind, and thank you. And the neat thing is, I'm gonna actually break off on my situation for a second. Not only have we seen success with us, but I joined Tardis about a year ago. We've been clients for several years now, and before I ever joined as a wealth coach, we'd referred over 20 of our friends to become members, and they've all seen significant success. So I'll talk about that as we go, but I'm so convinced about this passive income strategy and what it does for people that I love talking about it, and I've seen it firsthand in like our whole community of friends. So, all right, I digress, but let me get back onto topic here, which is what is this system? People are like wondering now. All right, Adam, just spit it out. So I'm going to spit it out.
Yeah, we've teased him enough.
Yes. So Tardus as a system is basically pretty simple. You use a line of credit, and from that line of credit, whether that's a personal line of credit or a home equity line of credit or some other, you could use an insurance policy that has access to capital, and we help you to make investments. And so our investments are 3 year, they started as usually 3 year amortized principal and interest investments. And so we have basically curated investments that Tardus as a company works with different vendors on. And we're investment agnostic in the end. So we don't get any kickbacks from those vendors. But we've had so many clients that we basically have created an investment system where you start to make these investments. And you'll do that all with a coach. So it's basically an education and coaching system. And so what happens is we first determine for you what's your cash flow a month. So cash flow is pretty easy to determine, right? It's basically you think about what is your net income a month and then what are your expenses a month. And the difference between those two is cash flow. And so as long as you're in a situation where you're 800 to $1,000 a month or more of cash flow, you're a great candidate as a Tardis client. And so you basically we determine your cash flow, and from there we determine how much leverage we want to use for these investments. And our goal is basically that you'll take out your loan, you'll make the investments that we will guide you through, these 3 year amortized principal and interest investments, and these investments will pay you for 3 years. But that line of credit that you took out, our goal is to pay that down in 3 to 5 months. And so what'll happen is you'll use your extra cash flow that you have from your budget plus the passive income that you're getting from your investments, and you'll pay that down pretty quickly. And so what'll happen is you now have this 3 years of passive income while having eliminated the leverage that you had within 3 to 5 months. And so you'll go back and you'll do the same thing again. You'll go back and go take another loan off that line of credit. You'll make another investment. You'll get more passive income. You'll pay it down, but you'll pay it down even quicker now because of the fact that you have more passive income. And you continue to repeat the process, and your leverage gets bigger as the process goes. And you start to create this snowball of passive income. And so it is pretty miraculous if you think about compound interest and how this works, how quickly that grows.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think that's a really, really cool model, and also, you guys have this built out into a system, right? So, you can actually plug people in real life and show them what it looks like, is that correct?
100%. Yeah. And so, really, our goal is when we have that strategy call with you, when I had my strategy call, they sat down we sit down and we actually model your exact situation. So this isn't like a one size fits all, we hand you a pamphlet. We're going to walk through and create a plan for you specifically based on your exact situation. And so that way you can determine, all right, what are my goals? What do I want to achieve? And we'll build that plan along with those goals and show you what you can achieve. From there, you actually get connected with a financial coach that you meet with every month for an hour to walk through, hey, here are the investments that you're going to make, and you'll get about as little or as much guidance as you're looking for. And a lot of people who work with us are looking for a lot of guidance, right? I could never have done this system on my own, and I was like I've talked about before, the self-proclaimed finance nerd. Because the system is so unique, not only do you have the guidance from the coach, so that's great guidance, great accountability, walks you through the process, but then you also get the access to the vendors that we use that can implement this type of a system for you. And so, and those are curated and chosen by Tardus as well.
Yeah, that's the cool part, and, the thing that I preach the most is to people is you kind of said it early on as well, is if there's a mentor that's doing something and they're steps ahead of you and they've learned something where you can do it and make less mistakes. If you have a mentor, somebody holding your hands, somebody guiding you, somebody just to check things off with, like, there's so many times, like, early on in my real estate investing career where I didn't have anybody to bounce anything off with. I didn't have that mentor or that coach, and so I was just kind of, you know, what is it called? Throwing sand in the wind or whatever, just kinda seeing, like, what was gonna go where, and yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes and I have a lot of trial and error through that, and so whenever there's an opportunity for somebody to work with somebody who's doing it and has been there and has the team and the resources and the systems. So that's what I'm hearing. I love a good system, and so I like to see it, I like to know what to plan for. I'm a rule follower with my little checklist. So that sounds really cool. So I want to hear a little bit more about your story doing it. So let's go back to, okay, so you sat down with your wife, they showed you what was possible, they plugged in the numbers for you. And I mean, I can only imagine, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but how are you guys kind of feeling at that moment when you kind of saw that?
Yeah, so for us, I can remember actually my wife and I, we were on vacation in Arizona. We went to Sedona and we did this call from the hotel. And my wife's like, "What call are we doing? And why are we doing this while we're on vacation?" It's just the two of us. And we're like away from our beautiful little kids. And so
That's probably perfect
yeah,
actually.
I think it was. I think it was. And so anyways, I remember we went on a walk after that. And I can remember the walk as well, where I said, "Hey, let's give this 2 years. Like, let's commit to this for 2 years. And then our goal will be that you can step back from work." Because she's a pediatric nurse, works part-time, but we wanted her to be able to be home with the kids more, work on some of the ministry stuff that she does already. And so, I remember to that day and I was very excited about it, but obviously we hadn't done it. So we didn't know what the implementation looked like and nor had any of our friends. And so we were really excited, but obviously the proof is in the pudding, right? So we had to get started and get executed. And so we started and within our first 30 days of starting, we started building passive income right away, right? We basically we had our line of credit, we made our first investments, we started seeing passive income right away. So that was
Like, what kind of passive income? Like, if you don't mind me asking, like, I mean, I know it's unique to everybody, but I mean, are we talking about $25 a month or, like, kinda throw some numbers out there.
it's great. Yeah. So when we started, our first investment was $20,000. And we basically that was based on we had about $3,000 of extra money in our budget a month. And so we made our first investment $20,000. That gave us about $650 a month in passive income starting out. So, which is awesome. But fast forward just to for a spoiler alert, we are now 3+ years in. We are now making $100,000 investments and we have over $20,000 a month in passive income.
Oh my gosh, right there, sign me up, Adam. Can I join Tardus? I haven't even talked to you about that.
We'd love to have you. But the thing is, when I tell people that story, some people think, "Oh, you must be the poster child. That doesn't happen to everybody." Tardus is a very linear system. I mean, it is based on math. The calculations were built by two genius mathematicians as far as the calculator and how this all works. So this is not. I'm not like some anomaly. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, we've referred over 20 of our friends. We have one of our friends as an example who he's a school teacher and his wife works at the church. They are not making a lot of money, but they have over $800 a month in passive income or in cash flow. And so they started the system and they're 3 years later at over $8,000 in passive income. So the system works whether you are a high income earner or you're just have a little bit of cash flow to play with. The system can be pretty explosive regardless. So that's what I have loved about seeing the system.
Yeah, and so the part where real estate comes in, this is where you and I got connected, and I've been working with Tardus for a while on the real estate end, and as you're building out this model, where does the real estate fit in? I know exactly where it fits in. If you don't mind telling the listeners where that fits in.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually like one of the coolest parts. So I talked about kind of how we get started. We get started with these 3-year principal and interest amortized investments, right? And so you start and you build this passive income stream. But as you can imagine, over time it becomes pretty large. right? And so you'll maybe start with $10,000 investments or $20,000 investments, but eventually that becomes 30 and 40. And that's not you putting in more of your own cash. Your cash stays the same. Our contributions never changed from that $3,000 that we started putting in. It's just the system builds on itself. And so you get to this really cool place where every 3 or 4 months, you may be investing thirty to $45,000, let's say, or $60,000, whatever that number is. And that is the perfect marrying to what you, Melissa, do, right? Because a lot of people want to transition from, hey, it's really cool to do these kind of fast burning fuel, kind of 3 year amortized investments. But what I'd really love to do is I'd love to transition to a permanent asset, to get into real estate, to basically start to build my real estate portfolio. And so, why this is so powerful is that you can actually take this income stream that you having this basically these investments, and you can use them for down payments on houses. So we have clients that have bought 4 and 5 properties in a year, basically using these investments for those properties. And so the down payment is eliminated within 3 months because you basically have made the investment and then it's paid down with your passive income. And then you're starting to get passive income off of your real estate. And then you just go and do the same thing again. And so it is pretty incredible to think about as a real estate investor. Hey, I don't need to save for my next down payment and then make that down payment, right? This is basically a way for you to have pretty large impact pretty early on in your passive income journey and build a pretty incredible real estate portfolio.
Yeah, well, and of course, my real estate brain kind of goes off because, when you're creating this passive income, and let's say you created, in your example, $20,000 a month in passive income. So my brain goes, okay, that's taxable income. Which is great. We want more money, we want more income, but now you just created some more taxable income. So we also need the real estate for the tax write-offs. We want to preserve your wealth and we want to grow your wealth. So then my goal would be like, okay, Adam, I know we talked about this before, but we got to get you some real estate so that we can get you those tax write-offs so that we can preserve your wealth. So that's also where real estate kind of comes in is absolutely, like, I can help investors all day long on that real estate side, and you can get you those assets, but we also wanna save you some money and preserve that wealth.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's why it's such a great partnership, which is the idea that either it's an accelerator for people. Like I always tell people, it's kind of like gas on a fire of your investment portfolio, or for those people who are just want to get into their first property but are saying, "Hey, I'm just struggling coming up with that down payment." Like this is a way for you to very quickly build passive income to get to that place where you can start to not only make the first investment but several others after that.
Exactly, and, again, it's a whole system where we're all wanting the same thing. We all want to create that financial freedom. We want our time back. We want to retire sooner. We wanna go to Italy on a gondola, in our 40s and 50s, and we don't want to do it when we're 90, and so learning these systems, I think, especially nowadays. Gosh, I'm thinking about my kids as you're talking to me because my kids are adults now, and I actually just got off the phone with, one of my daughters, and she's like, "I love California, I just don't know if I'm gonna be able to afford to stay here because the costs of living," and so that's my next question to you is, I know you said a little while ago, what did you say? Up to 800 to $1,000 in passive income, this might be a good thing for you. What about like young people, these, like my daughter who's like, she has a little bit of extra money each month. I don't know what exactly it is, but is this something for her or is there something that you have to have for credit standards or kind of walk me through that?
Yep. So I would say if, it's funny, probably when people ask you this too, Melissa, people are like, gosh, if you could if you could do anything, have a do over, do anything earlier, like this is something where we have some friends, actually a couple that my wife and I mentor who are 24 and the married couple, and they just signed up. And again, they have $800 a month between them, additional and budget. And to me, like, I think of where they're going to be when they're our age. I'm in my mid 40s. And like, I can't even imagine if you learn these principles early on in your life and are able to apply them and start to build that passive income early, it will be life changing for you. And I always say to people, this isn't a like money is everything type discussion. It's think about the possibilities that you will have as a result of not having to worry about potentially working, not having a W-2, or basically chasing your dreams of, yeah, having a lot of real estate. Whatever the case may be, the earlier that you get started, the more potential that you have to add possibilities, options to your life.
Yeah. So is there, because I know you mentioned a little bit about, you're gonna be taking out loans wherever those loans are. I mean, I suppose, you can always get a cosigner for loans if you don't have a lot of credit or, kind of walk us through that. What are the expectations with the perfect candidate and credit?
Yeah, great question. Yeah. So we would say that the ideal candidate probably has a 680 credit score or above, but we've definitely have had, we had a really wonderful gal who just signed up with a 550 credit score and she was able to get a loan. So that's not doesn't always knock you out, but it just kind of let you know where we stand. But the line of credit, the leverage is definitely an important part of it. And that's something that we help guide you through that process. So we have a line of credit application tips and tricks of basically how to get that line of credit. And we usually utilize local credit unions. Local credit unions love local people and love to lend them money. And when we're talking about somebody who has maybe $800 of cash flow a month, really all you're looking at is maybe getting a line of credit of 5,000, maybe 10,000 tops is all you need. So we're not talking about a large amount of money. And then obviously the larger your cash flow, the bigger the line of credit is going to be because of the fact that you're going to have more impact. But usually those folks are probably in a better credit scenario, typically. And if they're not, we can work with them as well.
Yeah, that's good to know. So there really is no hard nose to somebody if they've got a little bit of passive, or if they got, their passive income sitting there, they've got somewhat decent credit. And, again, we're all problem solvers. And that's one thing that I focus on too is I think that financial freedom is for everybody. And if I come in contact with a client who's going to invest in real estate and let's say they had an issue with their credit and maybe they can't get qualified for this type of a loan, well, I'm going to help you problem solve. I'm going to introduce you to this person. We're either going to repair your credit or we're going to help you get a cosigner or we're going to switch and do another type of a loan. And so that's the power again of working with people that are there to help you do more than just obviously the system is created for people to do this long term and create this financial wealth. The snowball, it's a long term thing. And so you guys are going to be there at the beginning to do the hand holding and the helping and problem solving. And this is a team effort. There's so many people that get involved that it truly becomes a team effort. And we all got to put our brains together to help people.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And you made me think of something else too. One of the things that people will outside of the, having a 680 or so credit rating and having that cash flow, some people will say, "I have too much debt." And one of the actual incredible things about this system that I didn't mention, and I mentioned it early on, is about kind of our own story was, we had a car loan, we had some other bills that we needed to address. We have people all the time that come to us with credit card debt, school loans, whatever the case may be. And those loans, if you think about it, burden your monthly cash flow significantly because you may be paying 500 or 1,000 or $2,000 a month where you actually the cash flow is there, but it's basically just being diverted because of these loans. And so one of the things that we also will build into your plans is how to address that debt so that we can get you more cash flow to build on that and get you to the passive income stage. And so that's something that's pretty exciting. And I would say that that happens for, if not the majority of our clients, definitely a good portion of them.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you brought that up because we did kind of just touch on it and just kind of briefly mention it that this is a way to help get out of debt. And here's the thing that I also firmly believe is goal setting. And that's what the system really is, but just in life and everything that we should be doing. A lot of people tend to not want to face the reality that they're in and it's easy to hide. I've been there, guilty of it. I remember just years and years ago, I hated opening up my bank account, like the app or logging in because I was like, oh, it just like made me like sick to my stomach because I knew it was going to bring some type of a stress to me. And so we have to come to terms with reality. We have to budget. We have to write down just your model of writing down and figuring out what your cash flow is. You guys, everybody listening to this, whether you're working with me or Tardus, please, please sit down with your spouse and get real. Open up that bank account and write down where are you spending your money. Like, it's shocking to see how much we eat out and, and the dumb stuff we don't need, the Amazon orders and just the quick fixes. Like, let's get real with that. That's step 1. Let's actually write down. Just writing that down is going to set you free. It's gonna give you some clarity, it's gonna give you some hope, and then also, guess what? If it hurts, that's good. We want the pain because then you're gonna seek help, and the help is out there. We want you to be successful in financial freedom, but you gotta do the hard part, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you made me think of a quick story, but I have, a friend of mine, and when we joined Tardus, I got, several of my buddies together and I said, "Hey, like, we're 6 months in. This is really working well. Here's what we're doing. I really think that you should do it." And I had a buddy who basically was like, "Nah," started getting into kind of analysis paralysis, thought it was going to be too hard, didn't want to do some of the budgeting part of it. And fast forward 3 plus years later, I talked to him this week and he said, "Hey, I am so disappointed with myself that I just didn't bite the bullet when everybody else did. I knew that I should have. I knew that I needed it." And he joined this week. And so I'm really excited to see his journey. But one of those things that we can get stuck in is we can create all these excuses in our head. I don't know how to budget, or I have too much debt, or my credit score isn't perfect, or whatever the case may be. And all those things you realize are excuses that are just going to hold you back. And so taking kind of that first step of whatever it is, like you said, whether it's writing down a budget, whether it's giving Melissa a call and learning more about real estate, whether it's us connecting and learning about your financial situation and how we can help you. Those steps, those little steps are actually the biggest steps. And then after that, everything after that becomes a lot easier.
Yep, yep. It's all about what you put out there. I'm a big believer in that is just one thing. Just one thing will push you towards the next one and you don't know what you don't know and so opening up your mind. I mean, we're on a podcast. Everybody's here listening because they want to learn and they want to do this. And then the other thing I always say is like it's great to gather this information, but the action piece like you just said, that is the step that just is going to move you that much closer, that much, to what you're trying to accomplish. And so, yeah, even if it's, when we're talking about real estate, it's picking up the phone and talking to a lender or, even all these little baby steps are what's going to get us there. So that's my big message for everybody today is action. So again, I'm going to have this call to action here. You guys, I really, really, really want you to learn about the system and maybe it's for you. Maybe it's not. I mean, it's worth a call seeing if it is. So I've got a link for you guys in the show notes. You guys can connect with Adam and see if that works for you or not. But and what other takeaways do you have for us today, Adam?
Yeah, I think it'd be great to do the connection. I think the action step is a really good part, good next step for us to take as well. Just to take the action, and I think just not being afraid. I always go back to that idea of like, what do I wish that I had done earlier, or I think about my friend, what they wish they had done earlier. And this was one of the best things I ever did financially. It is the best thing I ever did financially for us. And the reason that I became a wealth coach at Tardus was fast forward, after we'd referred 20 plus people, I just said, like, I'm so passionate about this system and what it does for people that I want to be a part of helping other people to do it. And so for me, I've never seen a system like this. The action step would be if this is something that is ringing in your head, like, gosh, this sounds like a great next step for me, I would say take that action.
That's awesome. Very cool. I want everybody to take that action as well. We got to explore everything. We're not taught any of this specific stuff in school. And so, wealth creation, financial freedom, we are taught in school to be workers and to be good employees and to pay our taxes like good citizens. And I want nothing more than to break people free from that. And if this system breaks people free and helps them get financial freedom and buy real estate and not pay taxes, I am all for it. We're breaking through it all and we're throwing it all aside. And that's all I want for you guys. Okay. So please take some type of action today.
Awesome. Awesome. Couldn't agree more.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today, Adam. It was wonderful. Thank you for sharing your story about you and your wife. I know that resonates with everybody because, you are your own success story. And so, anyways, thank you again for your time again today. And we will have you back on the call. Maybe we'll do another podcast and we'll answer questions. That's what we'll do. We'll have people write in some questions and then we'll do a part two. So, thank you again for your time, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.